Sir Philip Sidney stands as one of the most distinguished literary figures of the English Renaissance, a poet, courtier, soldiers, and literary critics. Sidney was deeply engaged in the intellectuals and cultural movement of his time. His contributions to the English literatures, particularly his sonnets, sequence, Astrophel, and Stella, his prose romance Arcadia, and his critical essay The Defense of the Poesy, solidified his reputation as an essential figure in English literary history. His works not only reflect the ideals of Renaissance humanisms but also laid the groundwork for the future development in English poetry and criticism. Philip Sidney was born into an influential aristocratic family on November 30, 1554, at Penshurst's Place in Kent. His father, Sir Henry Sidney, was a prominent statesman. His mother, Lady Mary Dudley, was the daughter of the John Dudley, Duke of Northumberland. Sidney's early life was shaped by his family's political aspirations and close connections to the Tudor court. Educated at Shrewsbury schools, later at Christ Church, Oxford, Sidney was exposed to classical learning, humanist ideals, and the literary traditions of both England, continental Europe. Though he did not complete a degree, his education provided him with the foundations in rhetoric, philosophy, and the poetry that influenced his later work. His travel across Europe further broadened his intellectual horizon as he engaged with leading thinkers and observed the literary innovations of the time. Sidney's Astrophel and Stella, composed in the 1580, is one of the earliest and most celebrated sonnet sequences in English literature, inspired by the Petrarchan traditions. The sequence consists of 108 sonnets and 11 songs, chronicling the poet's unfulfilled love for Penelope de Verlox, who is believed to be the real-life inspiration behind Stella. The sequence reflects Sidney's mastery of poetic form and his ability to convey deep emotions while adhering to the structures conventions of Elizabethan poetry. His sonnet explores themes of love, desire, virtue, and poetic inspiration, often juxtaposing the speaker's intense passions with his struggles for moral integrity. Sidney's use of innovation, poetic technique, including varied rhyme scheme and complex metaphors, influenced later poets such as Edmund Spenser, William Shakespeare. Sidney Arcadia, originally written as a pastoral romance for his sisters, Mary Sidney Herbert, became one of the most influential prose works of the Elizabethan era. The book exists in two versions, the original known as the Old Arcadia, and a more ambitious version, the New Arcadia, which remained incomplete at the time of Sidney's death. A blend of romance, adventures, the political allegory, Arcadia follows the story of the two princes Musidorus and Phirocles as they navigate love and political intrigue in the fictional land of Arcadia. The work showcases Sidney's narrative skill, his understanding of the classicals and contemporary literary form, his ability to weave intricate plot with philosophical reflections. Arcadia was widely read and admired, influencing Later writers include John Milton and Samuel Richardson. Sidney's The Defense of the Poesy, also known as an apology for poetry, is considered one of the earliest and most important works of literary criticism in English. Written in response to Puritans' attack on poetry, particularly those by Stephen Gosson. Sidney's essay argues that the moral and educational values of the poetry. In his defense, Sidney asserts that poetry is superior to history and philosophy because it has the unique ability to teach and delight simultaneously. He contends that poetry, by engaging the imaginations, can inspire virtuous actions, convey universal truth more effectively than factual account. The essay is deeply rooted in classical literary theory, drawing on Aristotle, Horace, and Plato, while also addressing contemporary literary debate. Sidney's defense of poesy not only legitimized poetry as a serious intellectual pursuit, but also laid the groundwork for subsequent English literary criticism. His ideas anticipated the poetic theories of later writers, including John Dryden, Samuel Johnson, and his emphasis on poetry's morals and imaginative power continues to resonate in modern discussions of literature. Beyond his literary achievements, Sidney was an active participant in the politics and the military affairs of Elizabethan England. As a courtier, he was a favorite of the Queen Elizabeth I, though his career at court was often marked by political tensions. He opposed the proposed marriage between the Queen and the Duke of Anjou and was temporarily banished from court as a result. Sidney's military career culminated in his participations in the Protestant cause against Spanish Catholic forces in the Netherlands in 1586. While serving under the command of his uncle, the Earl of Leicester, he was mortally wounded at the Battle of the Zutphen. According to legends, while lying injured on the battlefield, he gave his water to another wounded soldier, uttering the famous words, "The necessity is yet greater than mine." He died on October 17, 1586 at the age of 31, and his death was widely mourned across England and Europe. Despite his relatively short life, Sir Philip Sidney's impact on English literature and cultures was profound. His work not only shaped the developments of English poetry and prose, but also established literary standards that would influence generations of writers. Aristophus and Stella have defined the English sonnet traditions. Arcadia set a precedent for later prose fiction. The defense of the poesy provided a foundation's argument for the value of literature. Sidney's legacy extends beyond his writing. He became an emblem of the ideal Renaissance courtiers, scholarly, virtuous, and courteous. His life and work continue to be studied for their contributions to literary history and their reflections of the vibrant intellectual, artistic cultures of the Elizabethan era. Sir Philip Sidney remains a towering figure in English literature, embodying the Renaissance ideals of the poet, scholars. His literary contributions combined with his political and military endeavor reflect a life dedicated to intellectuals and national service. Though he died young, his influence endured, shaping the futures of the English poetry, prose, and literary criticism. In celebrating Sidney's, we acknowledge not only his artistic genuine genius but also his role in advancing the literary traditions that define English literatures to this day.